Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Tarusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Christoph Kohstall, founder and CEO of Kind Humanoid. Thanks for being on the show today, Christoph.
Thanks for inviting me. It's great to be here.
I am so glad that we could get this finally on the calendar. We know each other very well and have been in contact for a long time now. And I'm excited to talk about this because, you know, your journey from PhD physicist to founding Kind Humanoid, it's truly fascinating and you're a very unique guy. So let's jump into it. You, as I mentioned, had a unique background and journey to this point. So can you talk us through all of that and how you, basically your career path before starting Kind Humanoid?
Yeah, you just mentioned the quantum physics background, but I feel like relevant for what I'm doing now is what I did before, much more even, because I always loved being in my workshop where I grew up, building stuff ranging from telescopes to camera adapters and really building things from scratch. And it was kind of fun because at the time I was going to a humanities school, so it didn't really sink into me that building stuff has significant value, can have significant value to society and things like this. So I was really doing this more for the fun of it. And then when it was about what to study, I saw, I like all these kinds of engineerings, but figured, well, actually at the very foundation of all this engineering, there's physics. And this is when I decided to study physics. And I actually was in academia for quite a while, did my PhD in the field, even did a postdoc then at Stanford. But then the entrepreneurial climate was just too strong. And I got sucked into building my first company, which was a drone company. And it felt right because in academia, it was wonderful to work on very fundamental challenges. Mm-hmm. But what was missing is that it didn't feel like we have control over how this technology will touch humans. And that's the beautiful thing in the startup world, that you can build something very fundamental bottom up, but then you build it all the way to product, something that touches people.
Yeah. That's really true. I think that's usually like the step off point for people who have been in academia, right? They're like, okay, this has been great. I love research, like love the conceptual elements, but I want to do something tangible or that's going to see the light of day instead of just being in the lab. But again, there's a lot of people that are just career-long researchers, which is fine too. We need both.
Definitely.
What initially drew you to this field, like the robotics and AI space? Were there any pivotal experiences that set you on that path?
It may have been a little bit from stepstone to stepstone because from my tinkering projects when I was young, I was a total optics nerd. So the first company being a camera company, that made a lot of sense. And making this camera autonomous then drew me more into the robotics and AI field. And then after the first startup, I just was obsessed with the potential of AI going forward. I mean, that's now 8 years ago. And that's when I jumped into AI. And this is when the pieces came together for the startup now.
Awesome. And so you had a startup and then you were at Google Brain, right? After the startup, and then you started Kind Humanoid.
Yeah.
So you had a mixture of entrepreneurial, big company backing, really innovative, forward thinking, and then jumped in. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, I sometimes
So,
pride myself never having worked at a large company because the Google Brain team is a very research heavy team.
right, yeah, the
Yeah.
large company backing. So, what was the initial spark for Kind Humanoid? Was there a problem or gap in the market that you were particularly passionate about addressing?
It's it feels like it's been a challenge in the back of my head for a long time. And it's kind of fun when I think back when I was young, I always had these lists of projects I wanted to work on. And I made this rule for myself that I only work on a project when it comes back into my mind once again. Otherwise, you're just overloaded with all these ideas. So
Yeah.
and a similar thing actually happened with the humanoid, that I feel like 10 years ago, it tickled my brain to build a very different robot. I was obsessed with tensegrity structures, going away from traditional mechanical ways of building robots. And then 5 years ago, when it just became clear, wow, but now we also start having the tools to build robot brains, really versatile brains for those robots. That's when I just couldn't stop. And and so this is very much the technical path that led me to it. But then almost parallel to this, it became so clear what amazing implications this technology can have for society and which amazing impact it can have and what we can do with it.
You know, choosing a name like Kind Humanoid kind of suggests strong focus on empathy, human-like interaction, and not just, hey, we're going to stick this robot in a warehouse to do something that's faceless, etc. Two things. One, can you tell us the story behind the name and the company's mission, how those align, but then also give the listeners like an overview of what Kind Humanoid is doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, the first draw to the project was a technical one. But then as soon as as I've been working on it for a while, and as soon as it came to the point of, okay, it's starting to be time to form a company around it, it became clear to think about what is the type of product we want to bring out? What is this product going to do for society? And it is absolutely true that the shortcut or the closest to do would be to have it in industrial settings, but I see the potential way beyond it, that it can really be a technology for humans in a much deeper way than just to produce more products for us, that it can be a technology that is really around us. And as soon as we have a technology around us, like, I do feel that entrepreneurs can have quite some influence in how technology is deployed in this world. And that's why I wanted to start out with a pretty strong statement, and just why not start with the name right away at the company?
That's great. And so what's the company's mission?
It's to assist people in building a more inspiring tomorrow, because I want to emphasize this word assist, because too often in this field we hear this motivation of
Mm,
replacing jobs. I don't see how this does any good for humans. I mean, we will have shifts, but to come into this field with this idea, let's replace to make quick money, that doesn't feel like it lines up with what humanity really needs. And when you think about examples, think about, for example, let's say we can build healthcare workers. Why should we talk about replacing healthcare workers before we talk about assisting in healthcare to bring healthcare to more people who deserve it, like who cannot afford it today? So
yeah,
there is so much need for this technology that we don't need to start with replacing. We start with assisting and amplifying. We amplify the things humans should do, but often can't do um, because it's not economic at this point. To think about in manufacturing or product life cycle, for example, today it is unfortunately often not economic to recycle, to repair, to reuse, to build a more circular economy. And a technology like this can actually help with this, because
yeah,
it gives us access to more labor. And so there are beautiful things we can do.
that's great. Yeah, I did want to ask you about that because there's obviously a lot of debate on the ethical side of humanoid robots. You know, people have that skepticism or pushback about replacement, because there's obviously a fine line between assisting and replacing. So I'm glad that you addressed that, because it's key to, I think, especially the direction you guys want to go in, and giving more accessibility to things like healthcare and stuff like that, or assistance, isn't just a pure replacement side. And then there's also the other side where we just have a shortage. Even if you think about healthcare, right, there's just a shortage, and the cost associated to healthcare is like, it can't be the same for everyone unless something changes, right? So that's awesome. So founding the company, you've done it before. You went to Google Brain and then you started again, which isn't easy. Like, starting a company is never easy. I know I probably sound like a stuck record. I mentioned it a lot on this show, but I want to drive it home to any of our aspiring founders out there. So can you share, like, what have been some of the biggest challenges in these early days that you've faced?
In terms of the founding story, and because you just mentioned I've did it before, before it was an extremely steep and fast ramp we went on. We won a competition early on, kind of hired super fast in the beginning, and it was just a super steep curve. And somehow our technology sometimes even didn't catch up with the expectations and the steep startup curve. Now with Kind Humanoid, it was different, because I just saw 5 years ago, there's no point yet in talking to VCs about it, because everyone was still investing in specialized robots. But to me, it was clear that this, at some point, this is going to be the next thing. So it was something where I just started developing from scratch, and only when the time was ripe, which was frankly 2 years ago after ChatGPT came out, where kind of all the pieces were there, where it started to make sense. Okay, now we can actually make the case that this technology is around the corner. Now we can get on the company ramp. So in this sense, for me, it has been a quite atypical journey. It was really tinkering for years on it previously to it, and then found the company when the time was right.
That's great. Well, that's a great segue into talking about the technology, because for anyone that hasn't seen or heard of Kind Humanoid before, please check out the website. There's some cool videos on there. You can see the robot, the lab, etc. But it's different. It's different to this hype of humanoids right now. You were obviously before a lot of that, and it doesn't look the same way, and the technology is different, and just building materials, everything is like very unique. So can we talk about the technology behind Kind Humanoid and what makes your approach unique compared to the other players in the space?
Already the first time I thought of building humanoids, I had this pictures in my mind with this complete tensegrity structures, which is just very different from how a traditional robotic arm in industry is built. And then when it came to, okay, now I sit down, now I actually start planning and building it, I did not look at all on how traditional robots are built. Didn't look at, I mean, I know harmonic drives, but I didn't look into them much. What I did was I literally just went to the gym, measured the torques and speeds on my joints, then went to the grocery store, bought a chicken, and measured the material properties of the tendons and bones. And these were the numbers that then influenced the design of the system. And of course, you need to make some compromises, like what's the drive here? Yeah. In the end, it was clear at the time electric motors are the way to go. Electric motors have very different characteristics from muscles. But I proportioned the motors like this, that I wanted to make sure it still reaches human level performance in terms of speed and torque. And so I ended up building a system that is actually incredibly power dense. When you sum up the motor power on the system, it's 50 kilowatts. That's actually, you can build an electric car from that. And it's 10 times more power dense than a Tesla car, because I packed this in a 40 kilogram package. That's kind of fun that coming from the drone background, you tend to over obsess on weight reduction, all this stuff.
Right.
But turns out this comes in handy when it's about building a humanoid, because for passive safety, for agility, it is important that the system is also light. And for those of you who are watching it as a video, here's actually the first prototype in the background here with a full carbon fiber skeleton. And it was amazing to build this from scratch, because even if you compare it to other humanoids out there today, it has like these power density specs are amazing, and also the bill of materials is very important to mention, because if you build something affordably, then it can also have much more implications in what we use it for going forward. And we managed to build this prototype for $10,000 bill of material.
Wow. That is so low compared to a lot and it's not mass manufactured, right? I think that's the other thing. If you're building a prototype for that price already, if you were to mass manufacture, you'll reduce it even more so, and you refine and optimize as you go along. So
I will never ask anyone to build one of these robots one more time, because this was quite some work, 4,600 parts. Yeah. And we're already far along with building the second version of the robot, which you actually see in the background on the other side. And this is really designed for mass manufacturing using injection molding techniques and these types of things. Yeah.
I love that. Very cool. So how do you balance the technical challenges of building a human? Because obviously you built it from scratch. It's not like you said, not traditional robotics. And just on that point, actually, I think I was having this conversation recently that if you rethought anything, it's you probably wouldn't do it the way it's been done. Like manufacturing, for example, that now if you were to do it from the start, it would probably be a lot more software enabled, software focused than, a mixture of predominantly hardware. It's obviously been going that way slowly, and things have been getting refined and added to, software has been added to systems, and it's becoming more so a focus. But you would probably start with software instead of starting with hardware, right? And then have hardware be like an enabler after the fact. So the fact that you started from scratch, like a clean slate, to think this through without traditional robotics in mind is pretty cool, and probably the way that it should be, if you're trying to do something novel.
I mentioned it on the hardware side, but fun that you mentioned, same applies on the software side for building a humanoid at this point, because from the first minute, it was clear to me this is going to be an end-to-end based system. And so even when it came to things like, okay, I need a inverse kinematics module right now, I was just like grabbing a neural network for that and did not program it in traditional ways. And also the software stack, you won't find a SLAM algorithm in there at this point or something like this. It is very much geared to the capabilities that now come up with foundation models.
Yeah. It's just first principles thinking, isn't it? At the end of the day, how are you going to do this differently without, I guess, second guessing or rethinking all the common assumptions? But yeah, that's really cool. I was going to ask, sorry, how do you balance the technical challenges of building a robot, a humanoid robot, and then with them being user friendly and accessible in real world applications?
When you say balancing, this picture comes to my mind that I drew in the very first weeks when I started the project, where I looked at all the different technologies that need to come together to reach human level performance. And so compare, for example, the structural elements. Let's say we built the humanoid with carbon fiber, then you'll find carbon fiber is actually much better in terms of strength to weight than bones are. I mean, bones have their other advantages for sure, but I'm just saying technology is there. So building something like a skeleton, okay, we have the materials for that. Then I mentioned we cannot build muscles, but we have electric motors. And first you look at electric motors, you're like, whoa, that's going to be easy because electric motors can have 10 times the power density of muscles. But then you look at it closer and you're like, oh no, the force density is actually much less. So you end up with these higher reflected inertias, and you see, well, actually, I cannot, with electric motors, build now something that is as compliant as we are. And so I identified these areas where technology is behind nature. And this is in terms of actuation, it is the electric motor. In terms of sensing, it is the sense of touch, because camera and microphones are pretty good, but the touch sensing is not. And then in terms of reasoning at the time, 5 years ago, it was clearly this high level reasoning. And it was kind of phenomenal to see now that this, with the advent of foundation models, became better and better. But what I want to say in terms of balancing, I like to focus on all the technical areas where we're not par yet with human level. So often in robotics, when it's about to build a specialized robot, you only focus on one aspect. Like you want it to be strong because it needs to lift a car. But being superhuman in one aspect is actually pretty easy. But what no one has figured out is, how do I balance all this technology development to a way that we get on par with a human, that we reach the dexterity, that we reach the safety being around other humans? This is not figured out at this point.
Yeah. I think that's a key thing as well, the safety element, because if you want a general purpose robot, someone to help you in a hospital, at home, things like that, around kids, pets, etc., if it's too heavy, if it doesn't have the same dexterity, if it doesn't have the same safety built in, can be around, it's definitely a showstopper. Right? It's just not, you can't go forward from that. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. And I hadn't actually thought about that, what you said, it's easier to get something that's super strength, superhuman, instead of more in line with human. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. It's a very interesting way of thinking about it. I'm assuming it from your perspective, you think that is probably key in the type of robot that you're building, right? And the mission that you have as a company.
Yeah, let me elaborate a little bit more on this, why this is so important. I just gave this example of the robot that can lift a car. That's amazing, right? Because now you have a robot that can lift a car. But what else can this robot do?
Yeah.
And the goal is for us to build a robotic system that can assist in any job, in any task. And this is really where this general task capability comes in. And so it's not sufficient to just optimize a robot for one task. And usually when you think about any robot out there right now, just make a diagram, list all the tasks we have in this world, and then check mark off the ones it can do and that it can't do. And it is what the robot is good about. Yeah, that leads it to be able to do a couple of tasks, but then it's usually about all the things it is not so good about. And that's why I'm so much, let's bring it on par with human performance, because then it can help us in all these fields like elder care, healthcare, building circular economy, and so on.
That's really true. Interesting. So you've obviously talked about the mission and your goal. What does success look like for you in achieving this mission?
Of course, we have a kind of a staircase approach to success in terms of these are our next milestones and so on, and looking forward to cranking out more robots of the next version, looking forward to cracking the code to learning from videos so it reaches this general task capability. I mean, this is basically all the successes we want in the near future going forward. But then at the end of the day, the success is how do we build really a system and influence and change society in a way that my kids are going to be proud of us at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's really, there should be a high goalpost at the end.
That's awesome. Do you think or are there any specific areas you believe that you touched on healthcare, obviously, I know we've spoken offline about this as well, but are there any certain verticals or areas that you see your robots making the biggest difference or having the biggest impact?
This is such an enabling technology that I think we need to guide it as we go. I mean, I'm just giving this an example because it's kind of so apparent to everyone, but no one, I think, at the time of the smartphone came out, predicted the apps that will actually be so successful. And so I'm saying this because it just shows we need to guide it as we go along, because this is truly an enabling technology.
That's great. Yeah, it's a good point, because we have in our lifetime so many examples to use of that. Like the cell phone's a great one. And there's obviously a lot of fear right now that people have towards AI and robotics and replacement and all of that stuff. So the guiding element or the guiding focus is probably crucial, thinking about any of this stuff, really. Let's talk more about like the company and team as a whole, because hiring a team is crucial. What qualities do you tend to prioritize when you're building, well, when you've been hiring your initial key team members at Kind Humanoid?
It's really about the passion. And for every single team member we have right now on the team, that really applies. Like one team member approached me actually and shared, well, this is really what I wanted to work on going forward, and then we started jamming on it, and yeah, he's my co-founder now. And the first engineer then we hired was someone I interviewed, and I was like, he was at CMU, so he would have had to fly here, and I was like, I just want you to know, we are in a garage, right? You're not going to go to a fancy office building. And he was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. And the next our next hire, mechanical engineer, was just so hands-on right away, took on all the responsibilities. And I'm so proud of them, because the second of the version of the robot is really what they built now. And this really, when you have people who take this responsibility, then the company can scale.
Yeah, I think that's crucial for startups as well. And being in that like early scrappy stage where you're lean, you need to really just take on everything and think about how to do it better. At the stage you are as a company, right? What's going to make it work for now with the future in mind? So you must have to have a way of, or at least a focus of, balancing or cultivating a culture that has innovation in there, obviously empathy within the team, but also they're driven, right? And that seems to be central to the company's mission. How do you go about that? Is it just organic with the people you've hired, or is it a focus for you as a leader?
It feels really good because some parts of it do feel organic, and that's great. Otherwise, you can hammer and you run against your head against the wall. On the technical side, I do like to emphasize the systems approach, because this is really what sets us apart. We are not a company that just focuses on hardware or just on software. I don't like these buckets. And so we talk through stuff on a systems level, and that helps a lot. And in terms of driving, like, I mean, I talked about, I find care, elder care, healthcare, wonderful applications going forward. But that also sinks in for the people working on it, that, hey, we're working on something here that has amazing impact going forward. Because at the end of the day, when you stay up late and work on it, it's at some point goes beyond, I just like tinkering. There needs to be more drive. And then having the right goal is helping.
In a field that's so rapidly evolving like robotics, how do you ensure that the team stays ahead of the curve and continues to innovate?
So thus far, it's almost counterintuitive that how amazing innovative steps we could do as such a small company. And that almost tells you got to be small sometimes to move fast. And for example, building the technology from scratch allows you have control over every single component. So you can move fast. If you want to change something, you change it. You're not bought into any other ecosystem that may slow you down in the end. It may sometimes appear like, okay, you can jump ahead by using this component that's readily available, but then it may also slow you down. So this building from scratch is important. And then also be okay with throwing away what you did a couple of months ago. Like the software stack, for example, for the second version of the robot, I didn't want to slow down the team with saying, okay, just tweak the software stack of the first robot. No, it was again actually a from scratch development. And it sounds like, oh, that must take forever, but sometimes it enables you to be fast, actually.
Yeah. That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. Some people sometimes, it's always that build versus buy mindset, right? And how are you going to, I don't want to say cut corners, but like, how can you say jump ahead? But if you are trying to break the mold and do something different, building it all from scratch and being able to pivot or change it whenever you need to is probably so important and so powerful. Yeah, that's a good point. You give me a lot to think about in this show. Thank you. Let's look at.
You want to start building, helping us build robots? Yeah.
Oh, if I had the ability, I would.
You're already helping us in your amazing ways. Thanks, Greg. Yeah.
Trying. So let's look at the future of the industry right now and looking ahead. What kind of excites you the most about the future of robotics and AI? And are there any trends or technologies you're particularly enthusiastic about, or anything you've got your eye on?
Yeah, what excites me the most is really this paradigm shift of building a general purpose system, because thus far all robotics has been specialized systems. And why I'm so bullish about it is because, like, it's sometimes hard to predict the future, but on the other hand, well, let's learn from the past. And so many devices, when you follow the story, for example, in compute in the 60s, where you had all these specialized computers, one guides a rocket, the other one makes a certain calculation, the other one is for playing Pong. And then someone is crazy enough and is like, okay, let's build a computer that has a more general purpose operating system and can serve all these cases. And this is then what changes the landscape and leads to an explosion of new possibilities. And this is also what I foresee in robotics, that right now we have these specialists, but going forward, a generalist will frankly take over. And we've also seen it more recently in the domain of language processing, where large language models with their capability trees just ran over special purpose systems in their capabilities. This is really interesting, but that's also where I see basically this technology really needs some thinking. How do we deploy it in society? Because the potential is huge.
Yeah, that leads me on to what I actually wanted to ask you as well, because there's obviously this huge hype right now around AI and robotics, and the industry is moving at such rapid pace. Do you think, as industry as a whole, is headed in the right direction, or are there aspects that kind of concern you?
In terms of technology development, I find it beautiful, because foundation models, like the most popular ones, became the language models, and then they became multimodal on the input side with taking in visual. And now towards robotics, simply speaking, we basically also give them the output capability in the action space, not just to talk, but also to act. So that's a fundamental development right now. And it's going to be amazing going forward, the capabilities of this. And however, maybe allow me to say, like, as I am pitching these days, seeing how much of the world is driven by rather short-term profits, then thinking through to which society is this leading to, it does give me a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
And it actually reinforces my stance of, hey, build this technology in a responsible way. Don't get sucked into the quick rewards, because those may not be the rewards you're going to be proud of when you're old.
That's great. Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Thank you for sharing that. And I think there's a lot of people that echo your way of thinking about it. Because if you do look at the big picture, it is concerning. You know, we've got a lot of examples in society to use, and you know, recent history to use for as cautionary tales. So
yeah, okay, actually, along those lines, right? It's take the comparison with a grain of salt, but this thinking of what are the long-term implications and what is my responsibility of developing a technology, this is somehow, I feel like it is ingrained more when you come from a physics background, because there was this, what do we do with the ability of fission? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This is ingrained here. Computer scientists haven't had this atomic bomb moment, and yeah, that leads to a somewhat different thinking sometimes.
I guess in some ways you could think about AI being that right now in a lot of ways. Like, there's been so much talk about the safety and security elements of it, and we've all seen it in the news with AI and people raising their own concerns, open AI, and people raising their concerns or leaving and saying things, whatever it may be going on behind the scenes. But from a general public standpoint, people that aren't in the industry, you know, I talk about like my mum being aware of AI now and trying to use things, and it's just completely out of their generation's kind of like scope, really, from a day-to-day basis. But when you have those conversations and people are getting more aware, that concerns obviously come up. And I mean, the atomic bomb moment could be a shocking comparison to put it into, but we just don't know what will come in the future, right? If people aren't being mindful about how things are built and what they're enabling them to do. Let's before we wrap, talk about what's next for Kind Humanoid. Is there anything that you can share with us that's exciting? I know you were talking about your second version of the robot coming out. We've talked as well offline about like new hands and stuff like that, new direction. What can you share with the listeners?
Yeah. So for me, always a goalpost was to reach human level performance across the board, sensing, processing, acting. And this then would enable really humanoids to be among us, to be around people. And that's so important for applications in healthcare and elder care and so on. And to the state, like this vision was formed 5 years ago. But even today, like making the competitive analysis and looking at what competitors are doing today, this still stands out so much, because most move right now into industrial environments where robots are still fenced off, where they still do repetitive tasks, where they're still more or less an extension to conventional industrial robots. And to kind of go fast forward on this mission to bring the systems into everyday life, really, the developments that stand out are, let's give them the sense of touch. Let's make sure they have this general task capability. That's not just trained through teleoperation, a handful of tasks. And then let's also design it in a way that people want to have it around them. So more Baymax, less Terminator. So these are really the developments we invest in right now. And then on the journey, it's always about having the team behind the mission, and aligning also the investors behind the mission. And
Amazing. Well, Christoph, look, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. For our listeners who want to keep up with Kind Humanoid and yourself and all the developments, where can they find all of you guys online?
kindhumanoid.com is our site. I like to post here and there stuff on LinkedIn and X. Actually, next week we may post something fun.
Yeah.
About the applications in the healthcare space.
Amazing. All right. Well, I think the episode will likely come out next week as well. So share those links with me. We'll put them in the show notes for everyone. So if you're listening to this, check those out. If you're on YouTube, just scroll down, you'll see it there. And also check out the website after you listen to this. Well, look, Christoph, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to supporting you guys and keeping an eye on everything you do in the future.
Thank you so much for this opportunity today.
My pleasure.